You will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 sections. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to Section 1. Section 1. You will hear a telephone conversation between a representative of an Internet provider service and a man who wants to get a new password. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 7. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 7.
Good evening, this is WebNet and you're speaking with Natasha. How can I assist you today?
Hello, Natasha. I tried to log into my WebNet account yesterday and I realised I'd forgotten my password. Are you able to help me with that?
Of course. What I'll need to do is ask you a few questions to check your identity, and then I'll issue you with a new password. Is that okay?
No problem.
Firstly, can I have your full name, please?
Michael Simmons. S-I-M-M-O-N-S. I don't have a middle name.
Great. And your date of birth?
It's the 27th of the 3rd, 1988.
Right. And I also need to know your previous address.
I live at 12 Wake Street, and that's in...
We have that as your current address. What was the address you registered with us before you moved there?
Oh, yeah. I used to live at 319 Ocean Drive. That's in East Providence.
I'll just need your contact phone number as well.
That's 0492 48002.
And just a few questions about your account. Do you know what your current data allowance is?
I upgraded to the Gold account not long ago, so it's unlimited.
Yes, unlimited data. Right, now can you just tell me about your payment plan? Which plan are you currently on? Do you know?
Oh, hang on a minute while I think. Yes, I started off with a 12-month automatic renewal, but a few months ago I switched to the 24-month plan.
That's fine. Now when you first registered for WebNet, you selected 2 secret questions and provided us with the answers. In order to issue you with a new password, I need you to answer those questions for me. Firstly, what is your mother's maiden name?
My mother's name is Sarah. That's Sarah with an H.
That sounds like her first name. We're looking for her maiden name. That's her family name before she was married.
Oh, sorry, I misheard. It's, White.
White as in the colour?
Yes, that's right.
Now, the other question you chose to answer, what was your first pet?
The first pet I ever had?
Yes.
It was actually a goldfish.
That's what it says on your file. OK, that's all done for you, Mr. Simmons. I've sent you a generic password, which should arrive in your email box within a few minutes. I'll just make a note of the date, 30th of June. When you log in, I suggest you go to the Members Details section on the website and change it to something you're going to remember.
Wonderful, thanks.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 8 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 8 to 10.
Is there anything else I can help you with today?
Yeah, there are a few things. I've been having some connection issues recently. I think the problem is with the cable that connects the modem to the computer. Do you supply those?
You need a new cable. Not a problem. I'll arrange for that to be sent off tomorrow.
Thanks. Also, I'm currently signed up for 3 of your services. home phone, mobile and broadband. I use the internet a lot, on my computer and on my mobile, but to be honest, I never use the home phone and I don't see why I should keep paying for that plan.
Would you like me to cancel that home phone for you?
Yes, please, if you wouldn't mind.
Done. Is there anything else?
Yes, just one last thing. Do you offer any antivirus products?
Yes, we have one which offers full protection against viruses, spam and identity theft, which is useful if you're doing any online banking and that kind of thing. It's called the Security Pack.
Sounds perfect. Sign me up for one of those, please.
And we've got another one. It's called the Parenting Pack. It prevents your children from accessing harmful websites and downloading things they shouldn't.
I'm not so worried about that anymore. Both my children are adults and have left home. So, just the security pack, thanks. That's everything.
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to section 2. Section 2. You will hear a man being interviewed on local radio about a plan to improve a suburb called Red Hill. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 13. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 13.
Good morning and welcome again to Your City Today. With me today is Graham Campbell, a councillor from the City Council. He'll be telling us about the plan to improve the fast-growing suburb of Red Hill. Good morning, Graham, and welcome to the show.
Good morning, Carol.
Now, Graham, I understand that there has been a lot of community consultation for the new plan.
Yes, we've tried to address some of the concerns that local groups told us about. People we've heard from are mainly worried about traffic in the area, and in particular the increasing speed of cars near schools. They feel that it's only a matter of time before there's an accident as a lot of children walk to the school. So we're trying to do something about that. Another area of concern is the overhead power lines. These are very old, and a lot of people we spoke to asked if something could be done about them. Well, I'm happy to report that the power company have agreed to move the power lines underground at a cost of $800,000. I think that will really improve the look of the area, as well as being safer.
That's good to know. But will that mean an increase in rates for the local businesses in that area?
Well, the power company have agreed to bear the cost of this themselves after a lot of discussion with the council. This is wonderful news, as the council now has some extra funds for us to put into other things like tree planting and artwork.
Before you hear the rest of the interview, you have some time to look at questions 14 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 14 to 20.
Now, we've also put together a map which we've sent out to all the residents in the area. And on the map we've marked the proposed changes. Firstly, we'll plant mature pine trees to provide shelter and shade just to the right of the supermarket in Days Road. In order to address the traffic problems, the pavements on the corner of Carberry and Thomas Street will be widened. This will help to reduce the speed of vehicles entering Thomas Street. We think it's very important to separate the local residential streets from the main road, so the roadway at the entrance to Thomas Street from Days Road will be painted red. This should mark it more clearly and act as a signal for traffic to slow down. One way of making sure that the pedestrians are safe is to increase signage at the intersections. A Keep Clear sign will be erected at the junction of Evelyn Street and Hill Street to enable traffic to exit at all times. Something we're planning to do to help control the flow of traffic in the area is to install traffic lights halfway down Hill Street where it crosses Days Road. Now, we haven't only thought about the cars and traffic, of course. There's also something for the children. We're going to get school children in the area to research a local story, the life of a local sports hero, perhaps. And an artist will incorporate that story into paintings on the wall of a building on the other side of Hill Street from the supermarket. And finally, we've agreed to build a new children's playground, which will be at the other end of Hill Street, close to the intersection with Carberry Street.
Wonderful. Now, what's the next stage?
Well, the final plan...
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to Section 3. Section 3. You will hear a college professor and a postgraduate student, Diana, discussing her recent internship experience. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Thanks for coming in today to discuss your internship experience. Completing some sort of work experience, like an internship, is a core part of our master's program, and we want to make sure students are able to make the most of it.
That's fine.
So, as I understand, you were offered an internship by Gregory Associates, is that correct?
Actually, I got offers from a few companies, but Gregory Associates was the only one I seriously considered.
Was there any reason for that?
Yeah, they didn't offer the best conditions. Some of the other companies were offering to cover transportation and other living costs, that kind of thing. But I knew Gregory Associates was a widely recognized leader in the industry, and that was the big factor for me.
And were you happy with your choice?
Well, yes and no.
Mixed feelings?
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Everyone in the office was great. They didn't talk down to me, and they were always happy to assist if I wasn't sure about something.
Was it the work, then? Some students do find internships a little tedious and boring.
It's not that it was boring. I was doing new things every day, and I loved that. They really kept me on my toes. It's just that I'm studying economics, you know? But most of the projects I was assigned to involved more administrative stuff. It just wasn't relevant to what I've been studying.
I'm sorry to hear that. I'll make a note of it. Let's talk about the good things. What did you particularly enjoy about the experience?
Well, as an intern, the managers do tend to keep you at arm's length. They just don't trust you enough to let you take on a lot of responsibility for the big projects.
That's understandable.
Yes, but in a way, I liked that, because I got to stand back and watch and get a real sense of how a company like that runs on a day-to-day basis. And that was the highlight for me.
Well, that's great to hear. How did you find managing the internship alongside your study commitments?
Well, because my internship was over the summer break, that wasn't an issue for me at all.
Okay. What would you say was the biggest struggle then?
In the beginning, I might have said the hours. Those 6 a.m. starts were tough. But I quickly got used to that. In retrospect, the biggest difficulty was getting by on such a tight budget. As I wasn't earning anything, the whole experience really drained my savings account.
Yeah, that can be tough. And my last question, what was the outcome of this internship for you? Some of our students are lucky enough to get offers of employment before finishing.
At first, I was hoping I would be one of them. In the end, I wasn't, but I'm happy about that now.
Why is that?
Well, over the course of the internship, I ended up reconsidering whether this industry is really for me after all. I'm going to finish my degree, because I'm only a semester away from graduation now, but then after that, I've decided to pursue a different line of work.
Well, I do hope you're successful with that.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
Now, we're putting together a step-by-step guide about the process for students who want to apply for internships, and we were wondering if you could help us with it.
Sure.
What would you say is the first step?
Before they do anything else, students need to get their documents sorted. Companies need to see all sorts of things, such as reference letters and verified copies of academic transcripts. It can take time to get it all together, so applicants need to get onto this as soon as possible.
Great. We'll put that down as number one. And then students should begin researching companies?
Absolutely. They should look at a wide range of companies and the internships they offer. They really shouldn't limit themselves at that stage.
It would be time-consuming to apply to them all, though.
Yeah, so I think they need to weed out those positions they are not qualified for, or that don't meet their own needs and interests, and then put together a short list consisting only of those positions that are a good match.
And then?
Well, the next part is the applications, of course. I think the big mistake here is that some students just send the same cover letter and the same CV to each company, when in reality, every position is a little bit different. They really need to alter their applications so that they refer to the individual needs of each position.
I'll make a note of that. And should students follow up on their applications?
I think so. It's best to call each company. An email is too easy to ignore or delete. And not too soon either. A week after the applications have been submitted is probably ideal.
So if they get an interview, what's next?
Obviously, they need to prepare. For me, this included all sorts of things, like practicing my body language in front of the mirror and researching common interview questions online.
Any tips for the interview itself?
Most students are so obsessed with having the right answers, but I think the most important thing is actually to ask questions. It shows the employer that you are genuinely interested in their company and in the position.
That's really helpful advice. Thanks for coming by today.
No problem.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to section 4. Section 4. You will hear a lecturer giving a talk about Australian rock art to a group of archaeology students. First, You have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Good morning, everyone. I've been invited to talk about my research project into Australian Aboriginal rock paintings. The Australian Aborigines have recorded both real and symbolic images of their time on rock walls for many thousands of years. Throughout the long history of this tradition, new images have appeared and new painting styles have developed. And these characteristics can be used to categorise the different artistic styles. Among these are what we call the dynamic, yam, and modern styles of painting. One of the most significant characteristics of the different styles is the way that humans are depicted in the paintings. The more recent paintings show people in static poses, but the first human images to dominate rock art paintings over 8,000 years ago were full of movement. These paintings showed people hunting and cooking food, and so they were given the name dynamic to reflect this energy. It's quite amazing considering they were painted in such a simple stick-like form. In the yam period, there was a movement away from stick figures to a more naturalistic shape. However, they didn't go as far as the modern style, which is known as X-ray because it actually makes a feature of the internal skeleton as well as the organs of animals and humans. The yam style of painting got its name from the fact that it featured much curvier figures that actually resemble the vegetable called a yam, which is similar to a sweet potato. The modern paintings are interesting because they include paintings at the time of the first contact with European settlers. Aborigines managed to convey the idea of the settlers' clothing by simply painting the Europeans without any hands, indicating the habit of standing with their hands in their pockets. Size is another characteristic. The more recent images tend to be life-size or even larger, but the dynamic figures are painted in miniature. Aboriginal rock art also records the environmental changes that occurred over thousands of years. For example, we know from the dynamic paintings that over 8,000 years ago, Aborigines would have rarely eaten fish and sea levels were much lower at this time. In fact, fish didn't start to appear in paintings until the Yam period, along with shells and other marine images. The paintings of the Yam tradition also suggest that during this time, the Aborigines moved away from animals as their main food source and began including vegetables in their diet, as these feature prominently. Freshwater creatures didn't appear in the paintings until the modern period from 4,000 years ago. So these paintings have already taught us a lot. But one image that has always intrigued us is known as the rainbow serpent. The rainbow serpent, which is the focus of my most recent project, gets its name from its snake or serpent-like body, and it first appeared in the Yam period 4,000 to 6,000 years ago. Many believe it is a curious mixture of kangaroo, snake and crocodile. But we decided to study the rainbow serpent paintings to see if we could locate the animal that the very first painters based their image on. The Yam period coincided with the end of the last ice age. This brought about tremendous change in the environment, with the sea levels rising and creeping steadily inland. This flooded many familiar land features and also caused a great deal of disruption to traditional patterns of life, hunting in particular. New shores were formed and totally different creatures would have washed up onto the shores. We studied 107 paintings of the rainbow serpent and found that the one creature that matches it most closely was the ribboned pipefish, which is a type of seahorse. This sea creature would have been a totally unfamiliar sight in the inland regions where the image is found, and it may have been the inspiration behind the early paintings. So, at the end of the Ice Age, there would have been enormous changes in animal and plant life. It's not surprising, then, that the Aborigines linked this abundance to the new creatures they witnessed. Even today, Aborigines see the rainbow serpent as a symbol of creation, which is understandable given the increase in vegetation and the new life forms that featured when the image first appeared.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers. That is the end of the listening test. In the IELTS test, you would now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet.